Hi everyone, this is Priya from Youth Navigate, and today we're thrilled to welcome Nicola, a postdoctoral associate at the Yale Child Lab. She's here to share her fascinating research titled Examining the Association Among Adolescents' Emotional Clarity, Emotion Differentiation, and the Regulation of Negative and Positive Effect using a daily diary approach. Let's dive straight into some questions. So starting off, what inspired you to start this research, especially about emotions in adolescents?
We all know that adolescence is a time of big changes, physically, socially, but also emotionally. So teens deal with things like body changes, first crushes, more independence, and
Mhm.
all these things can lead to pretty strong emotions. But at the same time, they are still learning to manage their emotions well. So that makes adolescence an especially challenging time and
Mhm.
increases the risk for mental health problems as well.
Mhm.
So for me as a clinical psychologist and emotion regulation researcher, it's therefore an especially important developmental period to study.
Got it.
And and why do we use daily diaries? Um, Using daily diaries actually helps us because they repeatedly capture daily feelings, making it easier to see how emotions in teens also change day to day. And
Mhm.
this way we can also understand not just how one person feels over time, but also how they handle emotions on good days versus bad days, or also on days with high versus low emotional clarity. And another important advantage of daily diaries is
Mhm.
that we don't have to ask teens to evaluate how they felt on average, for example, for the last 2 weeks, which
Mhm.
is often done in psychological research using traditional self-report measures,
Mhm.
but that they only have to think back for the last 24 hours, which is way
That's
easier
true.
and probably also less biased. Yeah.
Got it. Could you define emotional clarity and emotion differentiation for us in 1 to 2 sentences?
Sure. So emotional clarity is the ability to clearly understand and be sure about what you are feeling,
Hmm.
um, kind of like from an observer perspective on your own emotions.
Uh-huh.
And emotion differentiation, on the other hand, is the ability to distinguish different emotions. Like, for example, knowing you're a little bit sad and very angry at one moment, and then very sad and only a little bit angry at another time. And just in contrast, someone with low emotion differentiation won't be as fine-grained in their feelings and will, for example, report being equally sad and angry all the time. So maybe these were
Got
more
it.
than 2 sentences, but
Got it. I think we got the concept. That's great. So you describe emotional clarity and emotion differentiation as connected but still different. So why do you think they
Mhm.
don't strongly overlap in your study or in theory?
The thing is also both involve understanding your emotions.
Hmm.
Emotional clarity and emotion differentiation focus on different theoretical aspects. So
Mm.
as I already mentioned, emotional clarity is more about being sure of what you're feeling, while emotion
Hmm.
differentiation is more about distinguishing between different types of emotions.
Hmm.
So a person can rate affect very similarly all the time, which researchers would use as an indicator for low emotion differentiation, and can at the same time feel very certain about the accuracy of these ratings, which would reflect high emotional clarity. And another time, one might rate affect items in a very fine-grained manner, but feel very unsure about the accuracy of these more differentiated ratings. So, yeah, I think that shows that these constructs might actually be independent, which is why it's important to not rely on one or the other, but to
Hmm.
conduct studies where you include both to see which one might be more important in certain contexts.
Got it.
Mhm.
So, looking at your results, they show that emotional clarity predicted emotion regulation, but then emotion differentiation didn't as much. So, what do you
Mhm.
think that tells us about how teens use their own understanding of emotions, like the difference between feeling clear about emotions versus naming them accurately?
Mhm. Of course, we still need more studies to replicate our findings, but I'd say you could say that feeling clear about what you're experiencing seems to be more important for choosing how to cope with those feelings than being able to differentiate between them. So, in other words, if teens aren't clear about their emotions, they might use ways to deal with them that are presumably less effective on the long run, like avoiding situations or downplaying their positive feelings. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Got it.
Mhm.
Why do you think emotional clarity appears to support the regulation of both negative and positive effects, while emotion differentiation seems to influence only certain strategies, such as like rumination?
Yeah, that's a very important question that I also had to think about a lot. There are several psychological theories suggesting that understanding exactly what you're feeling in a situation should help you to pick better ways to handle those feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and specifically for emotional clarity, I could imagine that if you feel very confused or uncertain about your emotions, it's maybe actually more likely that you try to suppress them more quickly or avoid the situation or even overthink, ruminate about them to try to understand what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, for emotion differentiation, I mean, we were very surprised that it was not really linked to any strategies except from rumination, which I guess also suggests that we need more research to understand this better, because it's kind of against these theoretical assumptions.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing that I could maybe point out is that in our study, we asked teens only about how much they used certain emotion regulation strategies during the day. We did not
Mm-hmm.
ask them how successful these strategies were for them. So it is possible that being able to tell emotions apart does not help as much as emotional clarity with what strategies you
Mm.
choose, but more with how well those strategies work for you. But yeah, we didn't measure that, so this is something for future research to
Got it.
find out.
Got it. So I have another question. So if emotional clarity were a skill, like playing an instrument or a sport as teenagers commonly do, what would practicing it actually look like for a teenager to improve emotional clarity? Could digital
Mhm.
tools play a role?
Yeah, so improving emotional clarity can actually be like learning any new skill. So teens can, for example, start by paying closer attention to their feelings and thoughts in their daily life by, for example,
Mm-hmm.
asking themselves questions like, okay, what situation am I in? What am I feeling right now? What do I feel in my body? Which situations trigger which emotions? It could also be helpful to talk to friends or family to get different perspectives, to find out how others feel in certain situations.
Mm-hmm.
And journaling can also help you to track your feelings, notice
Mm-hmm.
patterns over time. And especially in regard of journaling, I think digital tools like apps for mood tracking can be very helpful and convenient for this practice. And there's even one freely available app that was developed here at the Yale Child Study Center.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think there are definitely many options if teens want to improve their emotional clarity.
Got it. Moving on to a more personal part for the study. So what was the most challenging part of doing this study?
Hmm. Yeah, that is a good question. So I was fortunate with the study to be able to use diary data from my colleague, which made certain parts of the project easier,
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't have to collect data, for example, from teens. But however, understanding also the differences and connections between emotional clarity and emotion differentiation and explaining these ideas clearly in my paper,
Mm-hmm.
that was definitely tough, even though, I mean, it's my job and I'm a researcher, it can still be tough for me to,
Uh-huh.
or require patience to navigate in this like broad field and define how these concepts relate to each other and to emotion regulation. So I'd say, yeah, maybe this was the most challenging part about this project.
Got it. Then what was your biggest takeaway or the most unexpectedly rewarding part?
Hmm. Yeah, so I initially planned to study only emotional clarity in this project, but after discussing it, we decided to
Mm-hmm.
include emotion differentiation as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was a really good idea because there are so many overlapping constructs out there
Mm-hmm.
tapping into emotional knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
So I really think we need more studies looking at these constructs together in order to better understand their relations and their relative importance in certain contexts. and that we included emotion differentiation in our paper made our findings, I think, especially regarding emotional clarity, even stronger. And it also raised
Mm.
new important questions about the function of emotion differentiation, for example. So I'd say my biggest takeaway from the study was to, yeah, also always think about how the constructs I'm interested in as a researcher fit in the research landscape and if there are other overlapping constructs out there that might be worth considering as well.
Thank you for a great response. And last but not least, what is the main takeaway for teens from this research?
Yeah, so the findings of our research study suggest that if you are confused about your emotions, it might actually lead to making poor choices in how you handle them. Yeah, that's the response. I don't know if
Got
we want
it.
to redo that, but yeah, this is how I tried to summarize it. I found this one challenging because I felt like, okay, this really has to be on the spot, so
I think
and
that's
on
great. That was a
point.
great
Yeah.
response.
Okay. Good.
So
Good.
thank you
Good.
so much for joining us today, Nicola, for sharing your time and your insights. Your work reminds us that emotions aren't just something we feel, they're something we can learn, understand, and grow through. In that emotional clarity, I have a feeling it might just be a superpower in disguise. Thank you everyone
Thank
for
you.
watching and stay tuned for more research spotlights. And as always, keep navigating forward with us. Thank you.